May 10th, 1972. Over the hostile skies of North Vietnam, in a ruthless dogfight between Soviet-made MiGs and American Phantoms, Wizzo Roger Locher and Major Robert Lodge take down an enemy fighter with precise accuracy. But their victory is short-lived. Seconds later, their aircraft is shot down, plummeting to the ground in a cloud of fire and smoke. Major Lodge does not make it, but Locher successfully ejects, descending into the jungle canopy. As he approaches the ground, Locher spots an enemy airbase on the horizon, dangerously close to his position. A rescue attempt is impossible, he concludes with bitterness. No American aircraft would come for him unless he moved further south, near friendly lines. The problem is the journey would take him a month on foot. If he survives, a daunting and uncertain prospect. With no weapons and only a basic survival kit, Locher, displaying remarkable bravery and determination, realizes he has to resort to primitive tactics to survive the treacherous jungle, predators, and brutal North Vietnamese troops to see the country he loves again. Future Vietnam War veteran Roger Clinton Locher was born in September 1946. He grew up hearing tales of the American aviators who fought during World War II against the might of the German and Japanese empires. His fascination for aircraft increased in the early 1950s when the United States Air Force engaged the Communist forces during the Korean War. Thus, while attending Kansas State University, Locher joined the Air Force Reserve Officers Training Corps to serve his country. Shortly after completing undergraduate navigator training at Mather Air Force Base, California, the young man was commissioned as a second lieutenant in 1969. Roger Locher was assigned to fly the workhorse of the Air Force, the revered and highly advanced F-4 Phantom II, as a Weapons Systems Officer, or WSO. Locher's responsibilities as a Wizzo, the term used for the Weapons Systems Officer in the rear seat of the Phantom II, were incredibly complex. He operated the aircraft's radar and weapon systems, detected, targeted, and engaged air-to-air and ground targets, and managed communications, data links, and defensive systems. After completing his new training phase at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona, Locher joined the esteemed Triple Nickel, the 555th Tactical Fighter Squadron of the 432nd Tactical Reconnaissance Wing, stationed at Udam Royal Thai Air Force Base in Thailand. Here, he met Major Robert A. Lodge, the man who would fly their Phantom II over Vietnam, with Locher as his trusty Wizzo. Known for its speed, power, and versatility, the Phantom II could fly at over twice the speed of sound and carry an impressive arsenal to deal with North Vietnamese MiG fighters and ground targets quickly and effectively with no opposition. For instance, it carried AIM-7 Sparrow and AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles for air-to-air engagements, allowing pilots to target and destroy enemy aircraft from both long and short ranges. For ground attack missions, the Phantom II could be equipped with air-to-ground missiles like the AGM-65 Maverick bombs, general-purpose, cluster, and destructive napalm bombs that desolated entire jungle sections to assist Allied troops and scatter the enemy. Furthermore, the Phantom II was armed with the imposing M61 Vulcan 20mm rotary cannon, capable of firing over 6,000 rounds a minute for close-in dogfights and strafing runs. The mission of Locher and Lodge's Triple Nickel Fighter Squadron, 432nd Tactical Reconnaissance Wing, embodied a powerful threefold mantra: safeguard their own, document the action, and dominate the skies. In over 20 months and 3 combat tours, Locher and Lodge flew over 411 combat operations, turning both men into some of the most seasoned veterans of the air war over Vietnam. On February 21, 1972, Locher achieved his first MiG trophy. Utilizing his keen radar skills, Locher locked onto the Soviet-made fighter with a radar-guided AIM-7 Sparrow missile and sent it spiraling down in flames. Almost 3 months later, Locher and Lodge found themselves in a heated dogfight east of the Red River in North Vietnam. Trailing a formation of North Vietnamese MiG-21s, they closed into less than a mile. Locher's precise radar targeting allowed them to fire 2 Sparrows at one of the MiGs, one striking the right wing and the second impacting the fuselage. At this point in the war, the North Vietnamese had already launched the Nguyen Hue campaign, or the Easter Offensive, in March 1972, to deal a decisive blow against the South, decimate its forces, and unify the country under the communist banner. To prevent this, President Richard Nixon, who was already facing controversy in the homeland for the ongoing war and also wanted to put an end to it, authorized the armed forces to start Operation Linebacker on May 8, 1972. Operation Linebacker aimed to renew the bombing campaign in North Vietnam, targeting critical infrastructure such as bridges to reduce or prevent the flow of supplies to the North Vietnamese armies fighting in the south. This was part of a broader military strategy to disrupt the enemy's supply lines and weaken their forces. This included, for the first time, the mining of the main port of Haiphong to further disrupt supply lines. 2 days later, on May 10, 1972, the USAF and Navy dispatched over 120 aircraft to strike Hanoi and its vicinity, especially the city's rail bridge and the Paul Doumer Road. Spearheading the assault into enemy territory was Oyster Flight, a squadron of 4 Phantom IIs led by Lodge and Locker's aircraft, designated Oyster 1. Oyster's objective was to provide MiG-Cap, or MiG Combat Air Patrol air-to-air protection, to all the friendly aircraft destined to attack the Paul Doumer Bridge. While flying above its target area, Oyster Flight was warned by USS Chicago that 4 sets of MiGs were airborne in the region, and one of them, comprising 4 aircraft, was heading straight for them. The fight was on. The 4 American aircraft instantly dropped their external fuel tanks and went head-on for the enemy. Combat followed mere minutes later as Soviet and American aircraft clashed over the skies of North Vietnam. The fight was short but brutal, and every second counted. Roger Locher, a master of strategy, could not hesitate in a dogfight, and like the rest of the squad's Wizzos, launched his Sparrow air-to-air missiles as soon as the enemy fighters were identified through IFF. A barrage of 5 Sparrows from Oyster Flight made their way to the enemy before they could react. 2 were instant hits. Lodge and Locker's MiG score had risen to 3, and they were ready to take down a 4th as they maneuvered to confront the surviving 2. But luck had shifted sides, and it was now the enemy's turn to attack. While both pilots positioned their Phantom II to attack the 4th fighter, they were hammered by 30mm cannon fire from a MiG-19. The engine exploded. The Phantom decelerated and descended uncontrollably. Smoke began to engulf Lodge and Locker. Seconds later, Lodge told his Wizzo, quote, "Raj, we don't have any hydraulics." As the aircraft plummeted to the ground upside down at 8,000 feet, the men decided to eject. Locher went for the ejection handle and pulled instinctively. The next thing he remembered was the Phantom II going down over the jungle canopy, engulfed in flames and smoke. He never saw Lodge again. None of the aircraft fighting above saw any of the men eject and assumed they perished, but Locher was very much alive, parachuting near a ridgeline with trees over 40 feet high, close to a MiG base at Yen Bai, north of the Red River. He was alone in the wild, and the cavalry was not coming for him. Locher shivered. The jungle slowly embraced him as the parachute reached the canopy. Roger Locher had survived the landing with only minor wounds. The parachute was stuck in the trees, but the airman was able to retrieve his survival kit with some supplies and immediately sought to make some distance between the enemy base and his parachute before a search party arrived. He then pulled out the rescue radio and made a call, quote, "This is Oyster 01 Bravo. I'm on the ground. I'm okay." Captain Locher then resumed the long walk. He then heard voices and immediately rushed for cover. A search party was nearby and looking for him. Slowly but steadily, Locher made his way to a wooded hillside where he could spend the night undisturbed and analyze the situation. His supplies consisted of a couple of energy bars and 2 pints of water, which he quickly consumed. His survival vest contained 2 beeper radios, 4 batteries, a survival knife, a .38 caliber pistol with extra ammunition, a mosquito net, a small medical kit, a signaling kit with flares, smoke markers, a signal mirror, and a whistle. The captain came up with a plan. No effort would be made to rescue him if he was 350 miles north of the DMZ. Locher was almost a month away from friendly lines if traveling by foot. His best bet was to cross the Red River and go to inhabited mountains some 90 miles west so a search and rescue or SAR team could pick him up. It would be a rigorous and challenging journey, but there was no other choice. The survivor would live off Mother Nature and travel 2 miles daily during light and dusk to avoid enemy capture. Locher would try to connect with friendly aircraft when out of harm's way. With the objective settled, the captain went to sleep. A long journey awaited him. The enemy's search resumed the following day, with the communists coming within 30 feet of Captain Locher's hiding place. At one point during the hunt, local villagers, including children, joined the search party. Lucky for him, no village dogs were brought. By the third day, the sound of the search party ceased, allowing Locher to move more freely and make radio contact with little success. However, living off the land proved more challenging than he had anticipated. There was little fruit available, making Locher weaker with each passing day. Although the water was plentiful, Locher's misery increased with the constant rain, leading him to traverse less than a mile a day on certain occasions. When May ended, a tired and underweight Locher had traveled over 12 miles and reached the Red River Valley. Then, on June 1st, while sleeping, he was awoken by several Phantom IIs that flew overhead. He immediately called out through the radio, quote, "Any U.S. aircraft, if you read Oyster 1 Bravo, come up on guard." One of the Phantoms immediately picked up the call. A small search and rescue force of over 10 aircraft was immediately dispatched from Nakhon Phanom, Thailand. However, the SAR force was driven off by missiles and MiGs, raising doubts about the feasibility of a rescue so far north of the DMZ. Despite the setback, General John W. Vogt, commander of the 7th Air Wing, was determined to save his pilot, later stating, quote, "I had to decide whether we should risk the loss of maybe half a dozen airplanes and crews just to get one man out. Finally, I said to myself, God damn it, the one thing that keeps our boys motivated is the certain belief that if they go down, we will do everything we can to get them out." What followed was bewildering. General Vogt committed the 7th Air Force, comprising more than 100 aircraft, to save Oyster. In other words, he shut down the war in Vietnam to save one man. On June 2nd, 1972, a formation of 119 aircraft, comprising F-4s, refuelers, A-1 Sandys, helicopters, and jammers, headed to hostile territory to pick up Locher, who was notified of the imminent operation and told to pop up his flares the instant he saw American aircraft flying overhead. When the moment came, the U.S. aircraft laid down a protective smokescreen as a Jolly Green Giant reached Locher's position to hoist him up with a jungle penetrator seat. While the pilot was attended to by medical personnel, the massive air convoy encountered small arms fire in several villages. The rest was uneventful until Locher arrived at Udom Base, where a welcome party awaited him. General Vogt personally received him and complimented him. Locher had survived the dangerous jungles of Vietnam for 23 days straight. No aviator in the entire war would achieve such a feat.